Andrew SD for £4.99. So a fellow Brit. It says, pleasant good evening to you, Mr. H, and the respective panelists. With the announcement of the new direction of Bond, is franchise officially dead? Well, what this is the announcement, confirmation, should we say, that they are planning to evolve Bond for the modern era. Bond should reflect the modern era. Men are evolving, and thus Bond is evolving.
Men are not evolving.
It's utter diatribe and should be treated as such. I was going to cover this. I can't remember when it dropped, but we were going to do this as a segment. But hey, look, Andrew, we're now going to talk about it because you chose to do it as a super chat. So, what do we think about this utter codswallop that is Bond evolving for the modern era? I feel like I've got to announce it that way. What do we think?
FD Studios and their modern era audience filmmaking. That's what I say. Anybody that grew up in the 70s and 80s with freaking Charles Bronson, Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Clint Eastwood, those are men's men right there. Alpha males, action heroes. Now you got these beta cucks out there all over the place, which is probably what they're going to turn James Bond into, because too much testosterone is just not good for the world nowadays for some reason. F beta male James Bond, if that's what they're turning them into.
Of course it is. Undoubtedly it is.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly it is.
Nobody is going to go see this. This modern audience they're talking about won't even go see this.
No,
the modern audience isn't a consumer. They don't give a shit.
No,
they don't go out to watch movies.
Yeah,
the modern audience are a bunch of Rachel Zeglers.
Yeah.
Wow, that is There is no the funniest thing that I hear about with that terminology is that they make an assumption that there is an audience outside of which they don't have. They have an audience in a given area. And they're telling us that they don't have a wider that they need this little segment of the audience to add to it. It's never an additive, right? You are making something that's broadly appealing to the masses. Stick with that. You're going to be far better off.
Yep.
And they I don't know. I've never been able to explain this, and I have tried why you would go after one of the smallest segments of the population, expecting it to make a difference for you. And you know what, Barbara Broccoli, if her dad were still alive, this is not shit to be pulling.
It'd be so pissed. So this is the interview that Andrew was referring to with Guardian of all shit rags.
Okay.
Broccoli informed the outlet that there are plans for the character to be reinvented for the next chapter, albeit she and other executives haven't even begun that process yet. The Guardian's Tara Conlon added she added that the next film would have to reflect the way the world has changed in the 2 decades since Craig was confirmed as the 6007. Pointed out that Bond has often been reinvented, and now this is the crux of it, right? So Bond, as an archetype, in terms of how that character is represented on screen, has been reinvented, but not in the way that they're trying to frame that they're going to do it now. So, you've had subtle variations between the Bonds, but who Bond is at his core has always been the same. He's been a womanizer. It's a bit of fun. It's always interesting. Who's he going to fuck? Who's going on here? Who's the Bond girl? Ooh, who's going to turn him down and slap him? Who's he going to bone at the end? It's part of it, right? He sort of sidles up to people. He's a drinker. He's this. He's a man that gallops around the world with a license to kill, for goodness sake. So those are things have always remained the same, but there's been some subtle variations between the character, how he fights, whether he's using, a sort of a plethora of the gadgets that he's known for. But reinventing him in terms of what they mean is changing his characterization, which would be like having Bond without fucking gadgets. It's not Bond.
And instead of moving forward, instead of who's the next Bond girl, it's going to be like who's the next non-binary co-star for Bond. It's going to be some weird. It's going to be some weird shit like that. Yeah.
So she says this. I go back to GoldenEye when everyone was saying the Cold War is over, the wall is over, Bond is dead, no need for Bond. The whole world's at peace, and now there's no villains. And boy, was that wrong. Yes, that's got nothing to do with what you actually mean, though, does it? At all.
Yeah, he's still the same character.
Again, here, modernization is necessary whenever a new actor plays the part. No, it isn't.
No,
it's really not. Unbelievable. Andre, we've not heard from you, I don't think, have we?
Well, no, not really. I think it's just frustrating because you can't do James Bond in this day and age. James Bond for modern audiences. Basically, you're saying right away, oh, you want to tank James Bond. I mean, you might as well hire Rachel Zegler for the part right away. The only way that you can do James Bond right, I think, is to do a period piece. Because just look at law enforcement across the Western world. It's been pussified beyond belief. I mean, just look at that chick, the one who is going viral again because she lost it with like demonstrators and stuff like that. That's a modern day police for you. There was a time not too many decades ago when the police, law enforcement, military, everything were big, strong, tough men. This is the same for criminals as well, come to think of it. They could dish it out, and they could take it, because it was a different world. It was the same thing with like special operatives and stuff. They also could dish it out, they could take it. They were inconspicuous, but they were hard as nails, right? You don't really have that kind of espionage today. I mean, it's all electronic. I mean, like, I'm sure that for the States, for instance, has like some level of assets on the ground around the place. I don't know how long they would last in a physical fight. I don't know how long or how well they would be able to pick up a chick or anything like that, because most of the espionage right now is done by the likes of NSA. It's done by hackers. That's where you get like the intel these days. There's no need to send people behind enemy lines. So, like a James Bond for modern audiences, well, basically that's a pussified feminine man, if he's a man at all, with very high estrogen content in his blood, who's going to be very concerned with his pronouns, just like many armies around the Western world are right now, right? So I think you don't do a James Bond because it's a joke. There are no James Bonds anymore. It's all done. I mean, maybe Mossad has a couple of people that could be like that, but beyond that, there's no more James Bonds. So what do? Well, you go back to a time when there actually were James Bonds. You do like do a period piece taking place during the Cold War, when there was no NSA, when you actually had to send in spies on the ground to get intel, and the world ain't like that anymore. And so making a Bond for modern audiences, it's destined to fail for that exact reason. I mean, just look at Daniel Craig's Bond. I mean, he was tough and everything, but he was crying milksop too. And the next one is going to be even more sensitive than him.
I agree. Tom, what do you think about a modern Bond? Reinvented, evolved for a modern audience. What do you think, mate?
Good morning. Sorry I'm late.
That's fine. We're just going to overlook that. It's fine. Keep steamrolling with your opinion, mate. Let's go.
This is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. I've said, in fact, the opposite many times over. Like, you could continue down this road, but why not just take Bond back to where he belongs? Kind of like with Indiana Jones. It's like, why can't they
Yeah.
just leave these characters in the era that they represent the best? Makes no sense
so-
to try and modernize them.
Very similar opinion to Andre's there, then, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
makes
By the way-
perfect sense.
By the way, the world doesn't work in a way that Bond wouldn't fit into it now. So I mean, I'm sorry. You know, I know men that, you know, still operate the same way. There's a handful of overeducated, you know, lowered testosterone people out there for sure. I mean, those are the ones that they're trying to, you know, soften everything for. But honestly, there are still men out there in the world, and you know what? Ladies love them. I'm sorry.
There's some on this podcast right now. You might
I'm
say.
just saying there might be a few men still. Just saying.
Oh dear. Right. Well, with that being said, Andrew, I think you got your money's worth there, chap, for that £4.99. That's for sure.